Welcome back. In this section, we're going to take a look at formulating questions for evidence-based practice, and we'll relate this to your own clinical practice. So hopefully you'll find it very useful. Let's look first at formulating the question. Asking questions is one way that clinicians can contribute to the evidence base. In your everyday work, clinical questions will undoubtedly arise. You might be able to provide some evidence in answering these questions. We'll look at ways that you can do this when we look at practice-based evidence in the final section of our package. But you can also start to frame questions for discussion, for research planning with your local university. But what do the questions look like? Let's have a think about that. Write down a question that arises for you when you think of a client or a client group that you're engaged with. You're likely to start with what's sometimes called a foreground question. This is something that arises generally from your practice. It's not likely to be formulated in a way that will help you in working out how to answer it. So let's look now at how to turn it into an evidence-based practice question. You may have heard previously of PICO questions. PICO is an acronym, of course, so let's look at what the letters stand for. Patient, problem, or population is the first element of a PICO question. We then need to look at the intervention or the issue, a comparison, and finally an outcome. The research questions that you'll read in the published literature generally take this form. Have a look at this question that comes from a paper published in 2008. Do preschool children with expressive vocabulary delays make larger gains in expressive vocabulary with individual treatment or with classroom-based treatment? Can you identify the P, the I, the C and the O in this question? Let's look at these now. The P, the patient, the problem, the population, is preschool children with expressive vocabulary delays. The intervention, individual treatment. The comparison is classroom-based treatment. So we're looking at two different ways of delivering therapy services to this group. And the outcome that we're going to compare is gains in expressive vocabulary. So we've worked through one question together. Now it's your turn. Can you identify the P, the I, the C and the O in this question? Are patients with aphasia who received SLP services shortly after their stroke more or less likely to achieve functional communication abilities than stroke patients who received such treatments later? So, how did you go? Did you find the four elements? Let's look at them now. The P, patients with aphasia. The word patients in the question is a bit of a giveaway here. The intervention, SLP services shortly after their stroke. And the comparison, receiving the treatments later. And the outcomes to be compared are functional communication abilities. Next time you read a research paper, have a look at the research questions. See whether you can identify those four elements in the questions. A well-formed question is an important aspect of a high-quality research paper. Go back to the question you wrote down earlier. Can you turn it into a PICO question? It might take a little bit of thought. If you need some help, why don't you discuss it with a colleague? See if you can nut it out together. When you've formulated your foreground question as a PICO question, you'll have completed all the activities for Section 4. When you come back to Section 5, we'll be looking at ways to access and evaluate the external evidence that will help you to address your question.